Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is currently Thursday, July 14th, 2011, and this is Day 9 Daily number 325, I think. Interestingly, this is one of those days where I'm just not quite sure what day it is. That's fine. I brought Manfred on, because anytime there's any little insecurities, Manfred's going to make it all better. Look at how cute. Look at his little furry bunny butt. It is so cute. Look at him. Look here. Just stare at Manfred's butt. All right. So, on today's daily, it's going to be Protoss versus Protoss. And the real issue that I have with Protoss versus Protoss, and actually that most people will have with mirror matchups, is that it's hard to find where your edge lies because of the fact that both of you are essentially making the exact same things, right? So we're going to be jumping into a whole bunch of little morsels, little nugget games, and talking about the edge in each specific one. Before we jump right into that, I just wanted to note... Oh yeah, that I'm going to MLG Anaheim. Do go to MLG Anaheim. And also on Sunday, it's going to be subscriber mono battles instead of a daily. So show up at 7 p.m. with your Battle.net ID in hand and have a chance to play mono battles with me and the other fine folks who view the daily. And also next week is Zerg Week, and we have a special guest coming on. Watcha. Should probably message him on Skype to double confirm, because I asked him offhand once, and he was like, sure, and then I never gave him a date. Bam. In other exciting news, I just want to note, I don't know if any of you have Netflix and have seen the show Flashpoint. Oh my god, that show's awesome! Okay, the basic structure is it's one of these crime shows, and it's about this team that handles the really freaking out people who are on the verge of shooting someone in the head. You know, like a hostage situation where someone couldn't get a sale on their shoes, so she went crazy and held the cashier gunpoint, and they try to talk her out of it while trying to position tactical squads to, like, you know, take the woman out with a sniper rifle, because my god, she's crazy if she's trying to go kill people because she can't get a discount. So, what makes it so awesome, my favorite part of the show, I strongly recommend it for the record, my favorite part is they always start the first 30 seconds of the show out right in the middle of the drama, and then they skip to like 3 or 4 hours earlier. Right? Just skip way beforehand. So it's going to start out with the woman who couldn't get the discount, holding someone with gunpoint in the store. She's freaking out. And then it's like 3 hours later. And she's trying to take a test, and her pencil breaks. Something like that. And you're just watching her like, oh, that bitch is going to go crazy in a second. You know? And she's like walking, and she's like has a coffee. She's like upset. She's like trying to get a new pencil. Someone bumps into her. She spills coffee on a pair of, like a white shirt. And you're just like, oh my god, no wonder she got a gun and went to the mall. Right? This is the sort of thing that makes it so awesome. And I really recommend it. It's super psychological. But I'm going to go ahead and put myself on mute so that way no one can call me on my phone in the midst of this. Very good. Yeah, there we go. Bzzz. Just have to be careful not to turn off my computer, because for some reason I put my phone right next to my power button. So let's talk about Protoss versus Protoss and talk about edges. Now, when I say an edge, what I'm largely going to be referring to is this idea about what you're trying to exploit to make a big win. So, for example, let's take a Terran versus Protoss. You're the Protoss player, and the Terran just did a one base all-in, and it didn't quite work out. So you're sitting on 2 bases versus a guy with 1 base. What's your edge? You have a better economy, right? That's what you're going for. You're going for the huge economy edge. And that example is a little bit obvious. I love how I took everything off just to scratch my head. That example is a little bit obvious, but it's still important to acknowledge a whole bunch of things like this. What are some other examples of edges? Well, let's say you have a bunch of Mutalisks out at the time being in a Zerg versus Terran. What's your edge? Your edge is that you have these fast units that you can harass with that you can use to buy time. It's hard for Terran to move out because you have these Mutalisks. So, another way that you can sort of rephrase the same thing is to say, what is your way to win? In a Terran versus Zerg, a Terran who starts producing tanks very, 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 very early. He doesn't get the stim very early. He doesn't get the combat shield very early. He doesn't even get that many Marines very early. But my god, when he moves out, he's going to have a bunch of tanks. So your edge, the way you're going to win in that circumstance, is with your huge tank force, and you're going to come out and just drill the Zerg with this big tank number and a whole bunch of other Marines. So the reason that this is so important in Protoss versus Protoss is that with everyone making about the same thing, and a couple of styles that are so strong, such as just generally big gateway counts early on, it's very difficult to find where you're supposed to be winning. Am I supposed to be attacking now? Am I supposed to be retreating? What's the whole big idea? In Terran vs. Terran, it can oftentimes be very clear, unlike in Protoss vs. Protoss. In a Terran vs. Terran, if I have a whole bunch of tanks, and you don't, then I can easily siege and hold positions and take expansions. Seems pretty good. Or I can do a huge straight direct attack. If I have all Marine Marauder and no tanks, what's my edge? It's mobility. I'm going to be swinging around the map trying to hit in all these places at once. But in Protoss vs. Protoss, you kind of just all have a lot of Stalkers and Zealots and Sentries early on. And there's some difficulty trying to sift through all that. And in particular, the 4-gate is a big struggle in this matchup. So what we're going to look at is a bunch of games where we see Protoss vs. Protoss with lots of early aggression. We're going to hop right in. We're going to start trying to identify some edges. Get ready. Get ready, class. We're going to be jumping in. And of course, one of my favorite players, OGS MC, versus a tip-top Chinese player, Zhao Ti. And it's going to be on Tal'Darim Altar. Now, there's not exactly a format for what your edge is. I mean, in some builds, you might say something like, oh, this is an expand build, or this is an aggressive build, or this is a tech-based build. And you can use that a little bit in terms of defining what your edge is. But what we're going to do in all these little tiny morsels and each one of these little individual exercises is try to identify in each circumstance what the edge is. And in this game, what we're going to see come out of Zhao Ti is a big 4-gate, and we're not going to see that from OGS MC. And I want you to try to think, what is his edge? You can say something like, he has more gas, or he has more gateways up, or he's going to get a faster expansion, or he's going to have a better economy, or he's going to get the +1 upgrade first. So this is always so key. In July Zerg vs. Zerg, you'll see him get a fast +1 attack upgrade, and he'll try to push in right when the +1 finishes, because the edge he's going for is about the same amount of units with you, or as you, but he has a better upgrade. So let's go ahead and watch this. I'm going to start slowing it down and bouncing back and forth between the bases. We see that they both have the same amount of Chrono Boost 46 on the Nexus. We're going to continue to watch our good friend OGS MC, who now builds a assimilator. Okay, we also see that this player has not yet built an assimilator, and they're both still saving up on gas. There's one Chrono Boost going down on the Warp Gate. There's one Chrono Boost going down on the Warp Gate. So right now, OGS MC has just gotten the opportunity to get into this base. Now, what would happen if he saw that there was no energy left on this Nexus? What would that mean if there was no energy left on the Nexus? Specifically, I want to come back here to OGS MC's base and see that there is energy left. Suppose OGS MC gets to his opponent's base and sees no energy. What are some edges that we can talk about? And if we can identify what these edges are, then we know how that we can proceed. You know what, the first one that comes to mind that I'm already seeing pop up here is the fact that, wow, you know what? Oh, frickin' Adobe Acrobat. No, don't restart my computer. I do not want updates. Cancel. I do not need you to go away. My God, my whole computer almost shut down so that way I can read PDFs. God, sorry. So in Edge, that we see MC would have, is that he can get a much faster Warp Gate. Because if I have energy and I'm OGS MC and you don't have energy, then I'm going to have a faster Warp Gate if I just spend all my Chrono Boosts on it. What is another thing that that your opponent definitely has an edge on? Well, he's going to have an edge in terms of workers because he's Chrono Boosting that. So suddenly, if you're trying to go for some build that has some early game economy, you are completely abandoning this edge that you have. You are completely and totally abandoning it. We're going to see a real explicit example coming up in a moment of the way OGS MC is going to beautifully exploit the position he's in. We see an early second gateway. We see a little bit of canceling of something. Looks like he trapped his probe. Ruffle. We see 4-gate coming up. 4-gate. Great. There's the 4-gate going down. we see 2 gates, we see 2 stalkers. Now, in terms of edge, if I have 2 gates before you have 2 gates, I'm going to have more units. So for the time being, I can be more aggressive. And I should. Isn't that right, Manfred? Good bunny, little soft furry guy. You really should be going for a little bit of aggression if the opportunity presents itself. In the best case scenario, you do damage. In the worst case scenario, you walk back home. If you're really bad, you'll end up losing a couple of units, but remember, being aggressive doesn't mean you have to commit to attack. It means you show up and are willing to come back. You're just willing to show up. So now we're going to see some key decisions happen. So OGS MC is going to be up against a 4 warp gate. He hasn't seen it, but he is clearly up against this 4 warp gate. We see that this probe count being stopped at 20. The very standard 4 warp gate, as standard can be. And we see the warp in of the stalkers. And we see a very late 2 gateways. Here's actually an extremely interesting decision. I want you to note when these 2 gateways get built. We see these 2 gateways getting started right as all of Zhao Ti's 4 gateways are finished. It feels like 2 gateways versus 4 gateways. Now, the obvious thing to note is that if Zhao Ti can straight up attack MC and kill him 100% of the time, then I worry for this opening from MC and it's just bad, right? But what we're going to see is that MC is going to be able to hold it off, right? So let's say you are doing this build from MC. Let's look at a couple of intuitive choices that are going to come up. Warp gate finishes for MC. We see... Whoopsie daisies. We see that he has these 2 sentries coming. He's going to morph these into warp gates. And then he's going to throw down 2 more sentries with them. Here they come. Shadoosh, shadoosh. One of the big edges that we're going for with this play is probes. We're going to do almost the same thing. I'm going to go for later 4 warp gates, but I'm going to try to sneak out some probes. I'm going to say that right now. That's going to be our edge. That's what we're going for in terms of the win. And we want to think about the ways that we can exploit this. So we see we see a double chrono boost. A question of how you're spending chrono boost at this point is about specifics and refinement, less about ultra high level strategy like where is my edge and this sort of thing. We see more stalkers coming out. We see that, yes, he is aware now that there's going to be a 4 warp gate incoming. He sees all the units advance. Now, this is a situation that you might encounter in your game. This is the situation you might encounter, where you're getting attacked, you have some force fields that you have to do to be able to throw down to keep you alive. And this is the moment where people are going to say, oh yeah, PvP is all the same. It always starts out the same. This is so stupid. But this is actually a huge difference between the 2 players. The fact that this player has 2 more probes and a second assimilator. This is quite huge. And the fact is, when people think about, is it the same or is it different, they want to look from this, like 10-mile view down of the matchup. In the non-mirror matchups, it's clear when differences are happening. It's clear, oh, that guy's making roaches versus mutalisks, and that Terran's making mech versus bio. But in Protoss versus Protoss, the fact is that these gateway units are so strong that those are what define the matchup, and deviations from that are the huge thing, right? So when we come and we see 2 extra probes, oh my god, that's a stalker's worth of supply this early on. It's very difficult to pick up on that unless you zoom into the matchup. Because what we're going to see is some nice defense. This is just smart positioning, trying to stay as far back from the force fields as possible. Probe gets picked off. We're trying to morph in a couple more units, but as we can see, our Protoss buddy MC is going to be doing a little bit of a dance, but we're going to see some more decision-making from MC that critically aligns with this choice of getting a couple more probes, getting an assimilator. He's going to pull way far back. He's going to pull very, very far back. Because it is more than okay to sacrifice this position. It's more than okay to take some hits. Ideally, you wouldn't want to lose all your gateways, but this is actually a pretty easy defense by OGSMC, a pretty defining set of aggression by Zhao. But regardless, a pretty easy defense. Now, I have the question for you. What should OGSMC follow this up with? What should OGSMC follow this up with? We want to think about where his edge is. Let me tell you what he should not do. He should not attack right now. This is the very, very common thing that people will do, is they'll just immediately attack. Now, people are talking about things like Expand, Expo, people are talking about Immortals and Blink, about chrono boosting more workers. Yeah, Expand is the one that's coming up the most, and that's the one that I absolutely like the most. Also, a little bit of tech to throw in there is a great idea too. Now, why would the tech be a good choice? Why would the tech be a good choice? I want to ask that. The Expand seems like a good choice because we just killed off a whole bunch of his units and he won't be able to do much damage. That's true in any matchup. But the reason I ask about the tech question, yes, there it is. I see it first come up by Last Dinosaur. It's good to have you. I apologize for that meteor 65 million years ago. Yeah, he got this early gas edge, so he wants to exploit this. He wants to do these sorts of any sort of tech play, any sort of like getting Blink or getting an upgrade is an excellent thing to exploit, because the way you would word it in terms of edges is, well, if I got my second gas way earlier than you, I can spend even resources with you from this assimilator, all my minerals, and with this little extra bit, get something, in a sense, for free. Because we're getting about, let's see, like 600 gas from here. You've gotten about 600 gas, but hey, I have this free 500 that I can do something with. That's how he's going to exploit this edge. In a, if you watch the Steal This Build series, there was my Protoss vs. Protoss really fast robotics facility build, where you get 2 Immortals out really fast. The edge that I was going for in that build is having fewer gateways that don't go wasted, and faster Robotech. I'm behind on workers, though. I'm much far behind on workers. So what would my edge be with that fast Robotech and those leaner amount of gateways? Well, it would be the fact that I can easily get up a big timing attacks with the robotics facility. I have some good timing attacks planned. So let's see the way OGSMC pulls this one off. So we're going to see him make this choice to just move out straight cross map. And this is the sort of thing that, though is technically okay-ish, I much prefer an Expand and this action. You don't have to be that aggressive in this particular circumstance, because you're going to get a little bit more guaranteed damage. There's going to be some crazy trading that goes on here for a little bit of time. The reason we go through this whole thing is that, yeah, you know what, MC actually has this much stronger set of units, and this is the sort of thing that also is better for later attacks, slightly later attacks. The Zealot Stalker forces are a little bit better in slightly earlier attacks. Now, this is a real problem I have, and one of the reasons I wanted to open up with this game is that this is a pretty clear win for MC. He killed off so many of Zhao Ti's units in the first engagement that he has easily more sentries to be able to do a sort of push with. He has that gas edge as well. But it's so important to stop and do this exercise and ask yourself where the parts of your advantages are by thinking about these sorts of early distributions of the little stuff, in particular when you're getting gas, when you're getting these structures down. There's nothing wrong with saying something like, well, my edge is that I have a lot of gas, so I'm going to build up a lot of sentries, and I'm going to be able to do mid-game timing pushes with them. That also seems like a perfectly reasonable logic to me. And what I always want to do in these games, what we're going to start doing a lot more rapid fire, is start to trying to identify these edges. I have 4 games between OGSMC and Zhao Ti. Let's go ahead and we did the We did that first little cutie guy. We first did that very fast 4-gate versus a simpler 4-gate. Let's check out this game on Terminus RE. Let's look at it from just one Protoss' point of view. You can do this from both Protoss' point of view if you want, if you're trying to learn, but just try to watch every game and think, what should his edge be? What should his edge be? If someone has a big lead in economy, what should he not do? Attack, right? If he's just gotten a big lead, he wants the game to go on longer, because the longer I have more probes, the more money those extra probes have purchased for me, right? The more money these probes are bringing in. So I want to let the game extend out. Seems very reasonable, right? If I am low on probes and high on unit-producing structures, then yeah, I kind of want to be attacking sooner than later. So we're seeing, yeah, it looks like we have a little bit of vision, right? And your edge can be relative to your opponent. Like, you can say something like, ooh, I have an earlier expansion than him. I guess I just need to defend. That's pretty normal. But you can also say things like, again, look, we're going for this early gas. This means that we can get faster tech. This generally means that we're trying to win with techier units. If you're getting this assimilator, don't try to 4-gate and go for a win. Really don't, unless you're trying to play some crazy mind games. But don't do that unless you're, like, S-class GSL player. OGSMC getting himself is relatively fast. Gateways 2 and 3. We see him trying to push out just a pinch.
I'm here in the shadows.
Trying to do a little bit of fanciness. Yes, this is good. Now, one thing that I want to note, let's just do this exercise. If we're going for a really fast blink play, really fast blink, what's our edge? We can push up his ramp, and we can dance around the middle of the map more easily. I also would say that we can get a faster expansion. We can control the map a little bit more. We can shut down his scouting and his vision. That is our edge. See a little move out from MC. He's going to pull back quite nicely. So let us explore this moment in time right now. This is a weird moment because if we actually come to the unit counting station, we can see that MC has more probes than a typical player does at this point. Typically, a player has 20 to 22. So he has more than that. So he's going for a more elongated play. He's going for a little bit more of a long-term build. That's fine. That's fine. But you notice we don't actually see any tech quite yet. We don't actually see any tech. So we have a couple more probes than we normally would. We have a little bit better of an economy than we normally would. We have 2 gas, and we have 3 gates. I want you to think about what would this indicate to you that is going to happen. What would this, whoopsie daisies, excuse me, what would be a good indication of what his strategy is directed towards, where his edge is? I'm going to start crossing things off my list. He can't go for an early big attack because he doesn't have 4 gates. He doesn't have, and he is going for the second gas, a super early attack. A lot of people are saying expanding. I think expanding might be okay. Some people are saying timing attack. It needs to be a little bit more than that. It needs to be a little bit more than that. In my eyes, what feels most reasonable is a timing attack that involves some kind of tech, such as a 3-gate and then a delayed robo with Immortals, or a 3-gate with a why am I liking all these things? 3-gate with blink. There we go. Kind of a delayed blink. Maybe even getting up some higher tech than that. Zhao Ti's really kind of dumping all his resources into the blink, but when you have this sort of setup that MC does, it looks a lot more like a pretty damn big army. So expand, I think, is an okay choice as well, right? Just going for that expand. And a lot of people are saying timing attack and getting other... let's see. Let's see. What are some other things that are thing? A lot of people are saying expand quite a bit. I'm a little iffy on the expand. We're going to have to try to get some more reads on our opponent, but definitely I think that some kind of tech is appropriate at this point in time. Because as we can see in the unit counting station, we have an overall bigger army for MC if we just look at the warp-in schedules. That we're going to see a whole bunch of, we can see 3 units can start getting warped in. And if we go to the Everyman cam, we're going to see that Zhao Ti is just now getting his warp gate number 3 done. So we do see some more Zealots popping out. And what we're actually going to see from OGS MC, I think a lot of you are going to begin seeing this right now, is that he is going for a Dark Templar, a Dark Shrine. Where is it? There it is. Now that we have seen this thing go down, I want you to think again about the structure of MC's build as I stop hitting my freaking camera, right? Now, again, to use a different wording, instead of saying, what's the edge, we want to ask, where is the big win going to come from? What's the win going to come from? If we wanted to get just Dark Templar in there and pray he didn't have any freaking detection, then yeah, you know what we would do? We would just go straight for the Dark Shrine. We wouldn't do any of this monkey business like monkeying around. We would go straight for DT, very similar to what we saw OGS MC do versus Naniwa at the MLG. We see a blink up, a very nice warp in with Zealots being able to defend this. But I want to note something very important. OGS MC has never had the intention of attacking his opponent. He's obviously just in defensive mode because, as we can see, he's kind of trying to not die. But there's a very clever moment that comes up with this kind of build order, where we very clearly see the point of what MC is trying to do. Here comes one DT, and another gateway. And we're starting to slowly get a little bit more gas as MC, but we only have 2 DTs at this point in time. It gets blocked off. You can kind of see, yeah, you know what, DTs might be able to do some good. Might be able to kill off a little bit of stuff. And we see that he does manage to get an Observer out just in time. And the Dark Templar have to walk away. But interestingly, I'll actually note that afterwards, but interestingly we can see this push come up, immediate Archon morph, and then suddenly OGS MC that was making all these forces for defense early, all these not so gas-heavy units, and was devoting most of his gas to the Archon, now suddenly he can get this insanely strong mixture of units. This insanely strong mix, and in fact, in a lot of circumstances, you can even get the charge upgrade very quickly. We couldn't in this game because OGS MC had to go back and get the observatory, the robotics facility. He really needed to get the observers out. But let's actually come back here. There's actually something that I'm personally curious about. I want to come look at this units lost tab. You see a little bit more lost from OGS MC, and now a little bit more lost from Zhao T. We can see that there's going to be a couple more hits that get done. Continues to blink back. He's going to continue to pull back. So he does lose a little teensy bit more. But in fact, the way that this whole strategy works for OGS MC when he's going for this fast DT play is that he gets the DTs, maybe kills you, maybe doesn't, and then he's going to pull back and he's going to get the Archon out and kill you with a Zealot Archon mix. And oftentimes it can take a while to arrive at that in terms of your practice, but it really is as simple as Zealot Archon is super incredibly crazy good. Super incredibly crazy good. Because Zealot Archon, my brain is turning off today. Zealot Archon is incredibly good in the mid game, and at about this point right now, when we see that the unit loss is just a little bit more for Zhao T, and he really should blink and run away. This was a clear blunder, but it will never negate the fact that Zealot Archon is a good enough choice to just sort of straight out, flat out transition to. And in a sense, this whole opening just dumps directly into that. So now we're going to load up another game between Zhao T and MC. And MC is correctly doing a lot of defending, and then all these attacks exploit exactly one time for each build. In the case where he had a lot of gas and then went for 4-gate, he was exploiting his gas advantage to get a lot more sentries, and then when he went to do the counterattack, he crushed. In the second game, he used his fast Dark Templar tech to do a little poking and prodding, a little damage, but then he just pulls back, makes an Archon, and then just drills in for another fast win. Nice, simple, clean little plays from both of these players. And I want to keep this tab open because, again, anything more or less from these probes, from these probe counts, is going to be quite big. And we see Zhao T immediately halting at 20 probes. And what do we see OGS MC doing? He's going ahead and getting his Zealot mix. And again, a very fast gas. And this is the sort of thing that would make players quite uncomfortable to do. we're going to see MC comfortably go along in this route. And it's kind of funny because Zhao Ti has literally done like the exact same thing every single one of these games. Like just 4-gate all the time. He makes kind of a big blunder here. You saw how he moved out with those units. Let me actually back up just a little bit because I was too busy talking. We see these units moving out, and this seems like a reasonable choice. You'll see a lot of players do this. But the reason I don't like this is that this is a little bit too autopilot-y. There's no edge that we're actually exploiting here. We're just sending out a bunch of stalkers. Before, when we got 2 gateways early, and actually the first game we got 2 gateways early, we can easily move out with 3 stalkers because we have an earlier second gate, so we have an earlier extra unit that we can move out. But in a sense, this is a pure mistake by MC. This isn't Zhao Ti doing something necessarily better. Zhao Ti's build is very obviously just a straight 4-gate aggression, but then all these free units get lost. And now we're going to see MC in a really awkward spot. And you're noticing, this is, so many people will say, oh, that was so dumb he moved out there. A surprising amount of people will go, ah, he got so unlucky. This matchup feels so unlucky. But you still really, really need to note that if you're doing a 4-gate, the way that Zhao Ti is doing, moving out into the middle of the map makes a lot of sense because you're going to get a shit ton of units in a second. If you're going for a delayed second and third gateway, because as we can see, these warp gates only just now finished. If you're going for a delay on these 2 gateways, moving out this early is actually suicide, is actually a terrible idea. So you're starting to see that a lot of people will just kind of move out in a Protoss vs. Protoss in the middle of the map. And sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. And that's what feels like the matchup is a little bit coin flippy. But if you're doing a build order like this one, just embrace where your edge is. Yeah, you know what? This Robotech, this is where the edge is going to come from when we get our Robotech up. We're not going to win with this build by a great move out in the early game. If we open up 2-gate, we would win in that way. So we're seeing Zhao Ti move up, and MC is going to do some really nice force fields until units start warping onto his high ground. And then he's actually just going to die. And again, that little blunder where he lost all his units out here. Not actually unlucky. It's actually just inconsistent with the rest of his build. He tries to micro as best he can because MC is actually quite good. It takes a while for him to die, but as you will note, he dies. Alright, let's check out another game between these two fellows. So we're going through these games a little bit faster. It's 7:40. Cool. Alright, let's watch a game on Metalopolis. Kind of a weirder one. Zooming right in. OGS MC versus Zhao Ti. It's on Metalopolis, the old school version. Although this game is not actually that old. So, yes. You always want to just exploit one thing that does not line up on both your sides. If you're getting robos at the same time, I would not recommend trying to win a Colossus race. If you're getting your robo a little bit early, rely on the fact that you could be winning a Colossus race. So we see almost identical plays out from both of these players. Here's the non-stop chrono boost by OGS MC. Is moving out early on a good idea? Maybe with just these first 2 units. But then around the time that our third one's coming out, I would not be feeling it so strongly. Especially because we got the second gas. So we see more gateways go down for OGS MC. Another Stalker, and then we see that extra sentry there. He's chrono boosting. Well, here's something interesting. We're seeing some chrono boost be saved up. And by the way, what the hell are you doing, MC? Ah, this is so risky. This is a very risky play. I actually don't like this. The Zealot can actually get picked off for free. But we're seeing MC save up his chrono boost, and he can actually do a cute little trick, which is to warp in and then to chrono boost all 3 of these gateways and really sprint and catch up. And if for some reason he sees no aggression, he can just begin chrono boosting his probes again and go back to the resource win. We see OGS MC still ahead a little bit on resources, but this is still a very key moment in time to note. If he sees units, he can chrono boost these 3 gateways, get emergency defense up fast enough. If not, he's going to be spending chrono boost on his Nexus. Or he can just be spending chrono boost on his robotics facility. And this is a lot cleaner of a play for MC. Much, much cleaner. He hasn't yet seen any sort of crazy aggression yet. He's going to be getting up his robotics facility. A really fast Immortal is going to come out. And this is a similar situation to the one we saw in game number 2. This is the 4th game that we've seen. You see Zealots now getting morphed in. Fast Immortal, and we're going to see an Observer out. Now, don't go into the big defense mode. Don't think that you're being defensive with this. This is a real problem that many freaking huge numbers of players have in Protoss vs. Protoss, that they get a little bit too obsessed with trying to not die to certain types of strategies. So in particular, like a 4-gate. Oh, 4-gate Stalker always kills me, or oh, Blink Stalker always kills me. So let me get up some Stalkers and an Immortal, and then I won't die. The problem with I won't die logic is that you're not exploiting an edge. That's the huge problem with I'm not going to die, or I don't want to die logic. We really want to ask ourselves, what can you do with this Immortal mix? Can you expand earlier? Can you go for a timing push? Can you get out a robotics facility and try to go Colossus? Often what happens is when this Observer pops out for MC, or for your average Protoss, the average Protoss will take the Observer, go over, and see his opponent has completely skipped the first Immortal, has completely skipped the Observer, and has gone straight for the Colossus. And this blue player would make the mistake of going, well, I better hurry up and get my Colossus too. That's a big, big, big frickin' blunder. We actually saw a Robo Bay started and canceled by MC. Smartly responding to this, he sees no expansion. And he's actually going to see Blink at his front door. He saw a lot of Stalkers. There's nothing wrong with just getting this Immortal out. But now that we have this, what is the edge that we're going to have upon seeing Blink? Well, the real problem is that Blink Stalkers are really bad against Immortals. Zhao Ti is going to blink up, try to do some damage. OGS MC has been doing nothing but making enough units so that he doesn't die. But of course, that's only half the story. That's not all the story. So how can he exploit this edge? By a really huge timing push with more Stalkers and Immortals of his own. And often, interestingly, players will get Blink at this point in time as OGS MC. Now, I want to posit a question to the crowd. Why would somebody get Blink in this particular circumstance as OGS MC? It might be... why would he be getting Blink in this situation? It might seem a little bit weird or something like that. Because often you'll hear me say stuff like, yeah, don't spread out your tech too much. That's always a big danger to do that. Let's see. People are talking about maneuverability. But that's just a little bit. Yes, it can increase your mobility. I mean, these are always true. These are always true, but it's actually a little bit longer of an answer. Because Blink is awesome. Yes, correct, Nationus. Correct. Let's see here. So Blink Micro, where other things people are saying about mobility, but what is the other thing? People, it increases the lifespan of the Stalkers, aggression, extra firepower. This is only part of it. It's like half of it. It's like half of it. It is, alright. There's a lot of people who aren't quite saying it, that are dancing around it. Yeah, there we go. From Iota SC, it says he's getting Blink to negate the positional advantage of the defender. Or to negate the positional advantage and mobility you can gain as... I'm just going to reword it instead of trying to read it out loud, because apparently I need to get on the Hooked on Phonics program so I can make out sentences in the IRC. The reason that a lot of times you'll see a player like MC get Blink in this situation is that Zhao Ti can do constant little counterattacks and run around and run away. And it's really, really difficult for a slow army to keep up with it. But if we get these Blink Stalkers, we match the mobility. It's not that we gain mobility, it's that we match it. Mobility is always a relative term. You are more mobile or less mobile, not because your units are fast or your units are slow. It's because they are faster than his units or slower than his units. So when you get Blink, you are matching your opponent's mobility, but with these Immortals, you can now crush in a push. That's a very common transition in this particular position. So the overall army from MC is much stronger. Much, much stronger. So what MC is going to do that I think is very smart is he, well, in many circumstances, will just keep checking on expansions. Just make sure that there's no additional expansions popping down. And he's going to go for Twilight Council himself. He's going to constantly be adding on more Immortals one at a time. And as we can see in the unit counting station, there's more Stalkers on the Zhao Ti half. He can actually morph in a few more Stalkers right now, but he's electing not to. He's electing to get an Observer up, sending a little probe out. And it's actually quite good to expand somewhere like here when you have Blink due to your mobility. But this is a very sensible follow-up that was very hard for me to figure out at first, because it seemed like what Protoss players were doing was just getting frickin' everything on one base. But in reality, committing big to Blink Stalkers early is a huge investment that's very, very, very difficult to deal with. But these Immortals guarantee that his Stalker army can never touch ours, and our Blink Stalkers means that we can shut down the mobility of these other Stalkers. Our edge is our Immortals, and we're trying to cover up his edge, which is this Blink thing. And, I mean, in a pretty clear circumstance, we're going to see Zhao Ti do the next possible smart thing, which is to say, okay, well, my edge is I'm going to have just better, a bigger and better ground army, so I'm going to get the Speed Zealots to deal with these Immortals, so that way I can keep my Blink Stalkers as my main force, but unfortunately we see MC has a lot more units. Many, 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 many more units. And you're noting that neither player has a real edge in terms of the economy front. Both of them are kind of like sacking workers. And it is not so much the case that you must do this one base versus one base business. That is absolutely not the case. It's just that both players are exploiting their edges in aggressive ways. Especially in that first game, after MC held off that first push, he could have exploited that by going straight for an expansion. It might be a little easier to go straight for the Sentry. I'm a little bit more of an expanding man myself. But OGS MC just going to patiently build up a bigger army, swing in for a second wave, and we can see that the advantage for MC now is just that he has way freaking more units in every way, so he's just going to go attack and win. Alright, we're going to do another rapid fire one of these. Let's actually try to, let's see, what time is it? We are at 7:49. Let's go through a whole bunch of games. Alright, sweet. Let's dive right in. This is a weird map called Enigma. The only thing you need to know is that there is one big choke to your natural expansion. So we're going to see TT1 here in the bottom left, going to be building himself somewhat of an early gateway. What if you went for a 10 gate? What would your edge be? It would be faster tech and faster warp gate. How would you exploit that in some fashion? We see a lot of chronos saved up for Oxlav, building a pylon here right now. We're going to see a very standard opening out of TT1. He's going to go 2 gate. And he's going to be getting some faster blink. But we see a fast Nexus by Oxlav. And he's doing this photon cannon thing at the front to try to keep himself alive. And it looks like he buys himself enough time successfully to secure an expansion. Alright, sweet. So, what's your edge? How are you going to get ahead here? Well, the economy is going to be the big obvious thing. My personal preference would be to just do a lot of chrono boosting on probes, be very aware of having a solid enough defense, because we don't want to try to just break down the opponent's door right now. And in particular, to get some sort of bigger focus on tech instead of just regular old gateway units. But more importantly, any attack that I make in Oxlav's shoes is going to be way late. What I don't want to do is try to go for some sort of pansy 4 gate after I expand, because it's going to almost be exclusively weaker than whatever the opponent's doing. TT1 does the smartest thing ever, man. He's just going to instantly get a Nexus down. Like, immediately. He has the mobility advantage. I mean, this is an incredibly smart response. And what else is TT1 going to get? He's going to try to do stuff with tech faster. There's a lot of build orders that will, like for instance what Oxlav is doing. In that build order, you're not going to have anything particularly fast, you're going to have a lot of it. So you need to wait until you have that a lot thing. And there needs to be a great deal of focus on that. Often what I'll see when a player early expands in Oxlav's position is they'll do something like try to get Blink really, really quickly, and then immediately get some Stalkers with Blink and move out to do an attack. And this common issue that arises because people always have the drive to do things faster and faster and faster in a strategy game. But you see, the problem with that is that you'll finish your blink, you'll move out, and you just won't have that many units. You haven't correctly exploited your advantage, which is this huge expansion. In TT1's position, he actually needs to get tech up faster and be more aggressive with it in the moment. So we see him getting a lot of very fast blink stuffs up. And he should really plan on being aggressive with that as fast as he can. There's a couple of inconsistencies where his Nexus is a little bit too early, and this blink is a little bit too early compared to his Nexus. But I mean, this sort of move by Oxlov, I just did not understand when I saw this game. I mean, you're not going to get an edge with an early expand by moving out with some early stalkers. As we can see, TT1 punishes it appropriately. But an upgrade, that would be very consistent with an early expand. We see a blink going down. That's very consistent with an early expand. And I want to point something out to you right now, especially about the upgrade. Think of how many early expand builds have a fast upgrade as part of it. Early expand TVP, a lot of early engineering bay getting a +1 attack upgrade. Early Zerg vs Protoss, you'll see Zergs really quickly get a +1 melee upgrade. Early game PvT, you see a really fast armor upgrade. What are some other circumstances? There's just like countless ones. Early PvZ where you see an early +1 upgrade by the Protoss. There's so many early attack and armor upgrades with early expand builds. Now I want you to think of the big one basing builds. There are very few that have any upgrades, if at all, as part of them. Actually, you pretty much never see it. Now, the reason I bring this up is people have figured out over time that, oh, as it turns out, it kind of works good when you're getting this early attack upgrade when you early expand, and oh, it's working kind of bad when I one base. But it's the same idea as this whole edge exploitation. Over time, people have weeded out all the things that don't have early upgrades when they do an early expand, because there's just no real way to take advantage of it. Ba-da-da-bump. We see another expand by Oxlov. This is another thing that I'm a little concerned about because I think we need to wait until we have a few more units, but I still think that this is kind of okay. If we didn't lose all those units early on, this is a reasonable decision to make on the fly. But we see TT1 is going to mass up a bunch more stalkers, move in for a pretty quick and big attack. And of course, this is a sensible move by TT1. If you are going for an earlier expansion, you're going for a longer turn game. If I'm not expanding, I can just make a whole bunch of units and kill you right now. And we see TT1 Axelov just cancel it. And with his 5 gates, he's going to try to get a robo facility up, but of course, TT1 will have a slightly bigger army, because again, he did this whole huge focus on his gateways. He has 6 when his opponent has less than that. And with Blink Micro, it's going to be a little tragic. Would have liked to see a bigger focus on just getting a lot of units up, getting a lot of upgrades up, getting a bigger, stronger army up from Oxlov, because I didn't actually see any big mid-game army come out of Oxlov. I really didn't feel that. The reason we went through so many games today is that in Protoss vs. Protoss, it's kind of hard to have a broad general strategy. Even though I say something like 2 probes is a big deal. It is a big deal if you have an early 2 probe lead on your opponent, but the fact remains that physically it is easy to build 2 probes or to build 2 less probes. So you have to do a lot more looking at specific games and thinking, well, where was his edge? Where could he exploited that? And if you just start doing this every single time you end up seeing a Protoss vs. Protoss that's kind of quick, you can immediately start getting... you can lose your train of thought. Yeah, if you analyze enough games rapidly, you can start to build a gradual understanding. But I want to emphasize this. Protoss vs. Protoss is the, I think, most important matchup to do lots of post-match analysis on, because it's hard to see where your edge was. you have to go there and go, oh, he had 2 less probes. There's no way you would have known that until you start analyzing it a lot more. Or, oh, I had more gas than he did. I guess I could have exploited the fact that I had more sentries. There's no way you're going to know unless you analyze that and look at it after the fact. If you do something like, gosh, my freaking brain, Manfred, my brain sucks today. My little bunny's going to have to protect me. What the hell am I even talking about, you guys? My brain has just been... My brain sucks. Whew, I made it through this daily, man. I'm going to eat pizza after this. That's what I'm going to celebrate. Woo! Man, how the hell do I do it? How the hell did I get through that daily, man? I need to eat some pizza. Alright, I'm going to try to recap this point one more time. A big problem is that it's like 88 degrees in my room and my brain's starting to overheat and shut down. Okay. In Protoss vs. Protoss, the deviations, though big from a game theoretic standpoint, are small in terms of a how difficult is it to execute standpoint. It is very easy to choose to build a 4th gateway or not choose to build a 4th gateway. It's very easy to build 2 more probes or not build 2 more probes. Very, very, very easy. Anyone can do it. However, you won't quite see what went wrong at the time. If you do something like a Zerg vs. Terran and you get dropped all over the place, you can say something like, oh, I need to reposition my overlords. But in a lot of early Protoss vs. Protoss battles, you'll just kind of die. And you'll be like, well, I just seem to have less. I wonder why that is. And you must go back and look through those replays and try to see, yeah, you know, maybe I actually didn't have as many units as I thought. Maybe I actually needed to get more of this type of unit and less of that. Oh, I'm just gonna take some questions, man. I'm just gonna wrap this up. For Fun Day Monday, submit to me a replay at monday@day9.tv of you attacking with Zerg and always having creep underneath the attacking units. You may only attack on creep. Let's see. KZN LOL, you asked a question that was too long and got cut off. Oh, that's so good. Refrain87 says, Dear Day 9, why don't we see more top players doing you and Tyler's PvP build on ramp maps? It stops 4 gates and puts you ahead in a lot of ways. I just think it's just not that well known. And also, it is super thin. Super duper duper thin. Remember that game that we watched today of OGSMC losing to Zhao T? Well, in that game, OGSMC lost 2 Stalkers and a Zealot basically for free, and amazingly, he almost held it off. That's because there's a lot of wiggle room in his build. In my build, no wiggle room, none. You have to land the Chrono Boost exactly. I do feel like it's paper thin and then whoosh into strength, which is how I like my builds, but I don't know. I don't know. Stormfall says, Dear Day 9, what about Adele Scott's late gas PvP opening for a deviation? It's good against 4-gate and the quick robo. Yeah, you know, the Adele Scott's done some pretty creative stuff in that department. He does a lot of pressure early on because, again, his edge is that he's delaying his gas. He's going for more units. Depends on what deviation he does. If he goes for the early expand one, what I think is my favorite part about Adele Scott's early expand styles is that he gets +1 attack and +1 armor really fast. +1 armor cuts off 1 hit to kill a Zealot and a Stalker versus another Stalker. And +1 attack reduces 1 hit for your Stalkers to kill his Stalkers. I think that's right. I did the math once. I came up with that armor is better in Protoss vs. Protoss at level 1. Completely ignoring the attack. So I really love that for Adele Scott and the fact that he uses cannons. And another thing to note about Adele Scott is that in that build order that he does where he's not getting his second gas very early on, he is using minerals to defend himself as much as possible. His edge is minerals because he's getting more workers because he's not mining as much gas, so he does mineral defense. Zealots, cannons, stalkers. Very few sentries in that mix. And I like that quite a bit. I'm going to take some questions. And for any of you who'd like, I'm going to make a special announcement after the daily's done recording. After the daily is done recording. Let's see here. Let's see here. Just going to take one more. I'm almost done. I can do this. People are asking if I'm actually a fan of Dr. Pepper. I haven't drank it in a very long time, but I think this shirt is cool. Here's a great question by Link Fan of the Year. Link Fan of the Year says, what insights do you give to early Phoenix in PvP? Think about where your edge does not lie, where your edge does lie. It lies in mobility. You can counterattack a lot. You can always scout. So what does that mean? You should be changing your build a lot based upon what you scout. Why get a really fast scouting unit if you're not going to exploit it like hell? You are much stronger against zealots, so because you can just lift them up with the phoenixes and kill them off, assuming you don't overdo it. You're much stronger against things like immortals. You're much stronger against things like robo. So you're immediately cutting down a variety of things. The problem that I think you'd encounter most often, especially that I encounter a lot, is blink stalkers and just big amounts of gateway units give me trouble. So that's my insight on that. I'm going to wrap up the daily. Alright, I'm going to turn the screen off, and for a special announcement afterwards, stay tuned. I just have to do this, and now I'm going to be silent for a few minutes. Actually, it's more like 15 seconds. Alright, I'm back. Holy crap, I couldn't stay focused. That doesn't happen to me very often at all. Oh my god, you guys. I didn't have any focus. I kept talking and literally my mind went blank like 20 times this daily. I was in the middle of a sentence and I was like, what the hell am I talking about? I actually watched like 30 Protoss vs. Protosses and had clear explanations for like all of them. Man, my brain, what a asshole my freaking brain was. I could not think of a... oh my god, I want to like punch myself in the head. Look, you know what I should say? Go watch the Steal This Build in Protoss vs. Protoss, because it's a hell of a lot better than this daily. Crap. Butt shit. Butt frazzle, fruggle, diggle, snaggle, gargle. I bet it's a girl. Oh man, Chill Saver, no. Yeah, that would totally not be it. It was Manfred. Manfred's the one that did it. Oh my god. What a terrible focus run that was. God, Manfred's butt is so cute. This is the cutest thing I think I've ever seen. It gave GW1 who says, dude, this was my first live daily. Man, I'm sorry I didn't have enough caffeine. I needed more caffeine, man. I need to have more caffeine. Damn it. You know what? Fuck it. I do so many of these dailies. There's other Protoss vs. Protoss ones. Watch those. I've been actually researching a lot of PvP lately. I'm convinced that you can... I'm convinced that what's kind of going on in the way the matchup goes... Here's some bonus material for you guys that showed up live. I'm convinced that the way the matchup's kind of working is that everyone was doing 4-gate because it was so ridiculously strong that, you know, why not do the best build, period? However, I think people are still doing the 4-gate. Fuck, I cannot keep the thought straight in my head. God! Oh! Alright, I want to try this again. Okay, I'm actually just going to close my eyes and try to focus. Okay, so in Protoss vs. Protoss, it used to be all about the 4-gate, because the 4-gate was just basically the strongest build there was. And nowadays, I feel like people are continuing to do it, kind of as a relic from the past, but the fact is, I think that 4-gate is actually quite weak and quite stoppable. However, if you're getting 4-gated, you kind of have to have a pretty big defense there for it. And as a result, this kind of forces things to feel a little more one-basey than the matchup actually needs to be. I mean, hell, imagine if in Terran vs. Protoss, the only things that Terran ever did were 6 racks all-ins. Imagine if the only thing a Terran ever did in Terran vs. Protoss was a 6 racks all-in. Almost all Protosses would open up 3-gate, check to see if there was a bunch of Marines coming, and they wouldn't expand. And everyone would be like, oh, the matchup's one base versus one base. So I really feel like there's a lot more peeling open going on in the matchup, but I think it'll happen. It'll be a very slow peel away. Guys, I'm just going to go. Oh my god, my brain. I'm not actually physically sleepy,